Ever feel like you need, I don't know, a secret decoder ring just to keep up with the news? Especially the big government stuff. Like 1 minute you're scrolling, the next there's some alert, an executive order, and you're kind of left thinking, okay, but what does that actually mean for me, my family, maybe even my budget? It's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed, like you're missing something important. Well, think of this as your deep dive decoder ring. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that grabs those really dense, sometimes intimidating documents, official papers, research, complex news, and we break it all down, make it clear, actionable insights. We're basically here to give you that shortcut to feeling, genuinely informed, maybe with a few surprising facts along the way. So today we're plunging into a really significant presidential executive order. Just hit the Federal Register. Now, this isn't just some abstract policy idea, right? It's a direct order from the White House. It's got real-world implications for how our government actually runs.
Absolutely. These things matter.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't really bumped into the Federal Register before, think of it like the U.S. government's daily journal, sort of. It's where they officially publish everything. Executive orders, regulations, even public notices. It's the official record.
The official logbook, yeah.
Exactly. Now, we're looking at a user-friendly version today. It links straight to the official PDF, but just to be super clear, it's great for info, fantastic resource, but it's not yet the official legal edition for formal notice.
Right. That needs the ACFR, the Administrative Committee of the Federal Register, to give it the official stamp.
Right. But for understanding what's in it, it's perfect for us today. So our mission today, unpack this executive order. What's it trying to do? Which bits of government are affected? And maybe most importantly, what's the big picture for you, the listener? The title gives a big clue, commencing the reduction of the federal bureaucracy. So to kick us off, when you first crack open a document like this, what's the very first thing you look for? To get a sense of its, weight.
That's a great question. And what's really fascinating here is how even a short document like this one can signal huge shifts, really significant changes in government priorities, how things operate. So for me, my first stop is always the stated purpose. Section 1, usually. It tells you the administration's intent. It's the lens, the lens through which you need to view all the actions that follow. Understanding these foundational documents, it's really key to grasping where things are actually heading.
That makes total sense. Okay, so let's identify this thing properly. We're talking Executive Order 14217, signed by President Donald J. Trump, February 19th, 2025. And then it was published in the Federal Register just a few days later, February 25th, 2025.
And you mentioned its size. Despite the potentially massive impact, it's incredibly brief. We're talking, what, just 3 pages total?
Right, just 3 pages. But don't let that fool you. This order has already grabbed a lot of eyeballs.
Right.
By mid-August 2025, it had racked up almost 17,000 page views. Yeah. Even before it was officially published, during that public inspection window, 252 views. Clearly, people are curious. They want to know what this means.
Understandably so.
Okay, so let's get right to that core purpose you mentioned. It's laid out right there in Section 1. The stated policy is, and I'm quoting here, to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government while increasing its accountability to the American people. It says this begins a reduction in federal bureaucracy elements deemed unnecessary.
And this is where we get the why behind it, right? The stated benefits are, well, they're pretty ambitious. The order claims reducing the government's size will, quote, minimize government waste and abuse, reduce inflation, and promote American freedom and innovation.
Okay.
Now, those are definitely appealing goals, but it's worth remembering that different administrations often have very different ideas about how you achieve them. This order seems to place a heavy bet on the idea that shrinking the government itself is the main path to those economic and societal benefits.
And those are definitely big promises. They resonate with a lot of people, don't they? I mean, when we hear reducing inflation or minimizing waste, those aren't just abstract terms for most of us.
Not at all.
For you listening, maybe you're trying to stretch the household budget or save for your kids' future or just feel like your tax dollars aren't vanishing. The idea of government actions that could actually impact your buying power or make things run more efficiently, that's tangible. It hits home.
It absolutely does. And that stated purpose, it signals a really fundamental shift, or at least the intention for a shift, in how the government plans to manage its resources, how it interacts with the economy. It's a clear statement about fiscal policy, about the perceived role of federal intervention. What's interesting, though, is the challenge inherent in it. You're aiming for big economic outcomes, like lower inflation, through administrative cuts. Whether that direct link is as strong as hoped, well, that's something economists will always debate.
Right, so let's dig into the how. the nuts and bolts of how this reduction is supposed to actually happen. Section 2 gets really specific. First up, subsections 2A through 2C, they target specific entities for, well, trimming. The order directs the elimination of non-statutory components and functions.
Meaning if it's not explicitly required by a law passed by Congress?
Right, and also the reduction of statutory functions and associated personnel to the minimum presence and function required by law.
Oh.
So even if the law requires it, shrink it down.
Is it bare bones?
Exactly. For 4 specific entities. First, the Presidio Trust that manages the historic park site in San Francisco. Then, the Inter-American Foundation, they fund community development in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Okay.
Also, the United States African Development Foundation, similar grassroots work, but in Africa. And finally, the United States Institute of Peace. That's the nonpartisan group focused on conflict resolution internationally.
So for all 4 of those, the message is clear. If it's not legally mandated, it's out. If it is mandated, shrink it. What's interesting about this list, too, is that these aren't huge cabinet-level departments. They're smaller, often quite specialized bodies, doing specific work, sometimes internationally focused. Getting rid of them or cutting them back hard could signal a wider rethink of certain foreign policy areas or even domestic land management priorities.
And the timeline was tight, really tight. The heads of these places had to report back to the OMB Director Office of Management and Budget within just 14 days.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks from the order date, confirming they're complying and spelling out anything they absolutely had to keep because of existing law.
And this is where the budget hammer falls. Section 2C. The OMB director or other relevant agency heads are told, reject funding requests from these entities they don't line up with this order.
Flat out reject.
Pretty much, except for funds needed strictly for the termination process itself. So the purse strings get yanked immediately. Any money not aimed at shrinking or shutting down is basically cut off.
Wow. Okay, so beyond those 4, Section 2 also revokes some older directives and gets rid of entire boards. For instance, it specifically cancels a presidential memorandum from way back in 1961.
61?
Yeah, about the need for greater coordination of regional and field activities of the government. Something from over 60 years ago, poof, gone.
And it also tells the OPM Director Office of Personnel Management to pull the regulations that essentially wipe out the Federal Executive Board.
Federal Executive Boards. What exactly did they do?
Well, they were set up decades ago. The idea was to coordinate federal agency activities out in different regions across the country, kind of like internal government liaisons for specific geographic areas.
Ah.
So winding them down suggests maybe a move away from that particular model of regional coordination, centralizing more, perhaps.
That's a pretty big structural change right there, but it keeps going. Section 2E. This one focuses on terminating some pretty key programs and even amending other executive orders. The OPM director is told to start the process to, quote, promptly terminate the Presidential Management Fellows Program.
Ooh, the PMF program. That's actually a really big deal.
Explain that. Why is that significant?
Well, the PMF program has been, for a long time, a major pipeline, a pathway for bringing new, really skilled talent into government service. We're often talking about people with advanced degrees, fresh perspectives, coming into federal agencies.
Kind of like an entry point for high achievers.
Exactly. So ending it could really reshape how federal agencies recruit, how they bring in their future leaders and experts. It might mean a shift towards, I don't know, different types of hires, or maybe even relying more on outside contractors down the line. This could ripple through how government services are delivered for years.
And it creates a domino effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
The order says once those regulations ending the PMF program are final, Executive Order 13318 from 2003 gets totally revoked.
Going.
And another one, Executive Order 13562 from 2010, gets amended. They actually strike specific phrases about the PMF program and renumber whole sections.
Yeah, it's like pulling a Jenga block out from the bottom. The whole structure shifts a bit.
Okay, now here's where, for me, it gets really interesting. Section 2.
Yeah.
This part demands that within, again, just 14 days, the heads of several big departments and agencies must terminate a whole bunch of federal advisory committees.
Right. FACs, as they're often called.
These are the groups, right, that bring in outside experts to give advice on specific issues.
Exactly. Academics, industry folks, community leaders, providing guidance to government agencies.
And the list of committees getting the axe here is, well, it's pretty specific and touches a lot of different areas, stuff that might actually affect your life. Like, the head of USAID Agency for International Development has to terminate the Advisory Committee on Voluntary Foreign Aid.
Okay, international aid.
Then the director of the CFPB Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has to terminate 2 committees, the Academic Research Council and the Credit Union Advisory Council.
Wow, consumer finance and credit unions, that's significant.
Then there's the FDIC, the Bank Deposit Insurance folks. Their board has to terminate the Community Bank Advisory Council.
Another financial one.
And then on the health side, which is huge for everyone, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Directed to terminate the Secretariat Advisory Committee on Long COVID.
The Long COVID Committee.
Yep. And the head of CMS Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services terminates the Health Equity Advisory Committee.
So we're talking committees advising on foreign aid, banking, consumer protection, long COVID, health equity. That's a really wide range.
It really is. Looking at that breadth, is this purely about saving money? Or does it signal something deeper about how this administration wants to develop policy? Getting rid of all that outside advice.
That's a fantastic question. And while, yes, efficiency and cost-cutting are definitely stated goals, the range of these terminations suggests it's probably not just about the budget line. It could signal a shift, maybe away from relying so heavily on that kind of external, diverse stakeholder input.
And more towards relying on internal agency experts.
Potentially. That could certainly make decision-making faster, which has benefits, streamlining things. But the flip side is you might lose out on valuable perspectives. Critical insights from academics, industry, patients, community advocates, the people who traditionally served on these committees. It's a trade-off, really. Speed versus breadth of input.
And this list, the one in Section 2F, it isn't even the end of it, is it? Section 2G shows this is meant to be an ongoing thing. Within 30 days, key White House advisors, national security, economic policy, domestic policy, they have to identify and give the president a list of more unnecessary governmental entities and federal advisory committees to potentially terminate.
Right, so this first wave is just the start. It clearly signals a broader ongoing review process.
Makes you wonder how many committees there actually are in the federal government if this is just the unnecessary list being targeted first.
It's a lot, yeah. And this commitment to keep looking definitely shows the administration sees this as a continuous project, right-sizing the government according to their goals, not just a one-off directive.
Now, it's really crucial to understand, even with an order this sweeping, there are always guardrails, limitations. Section 3 lays these out the general provisions. First, Section 3A makes it clear. Nothing in this order is meant to impair or otherwise affect the existing legal authority of departments, agencies, or their heads.
Or, importantly, the functions of the OMB director when it comes to budgets, administration, or legislative proposals. This is really key because it means the executive order isn't like a superweapon overriding all existing laws or the established roles of agencies or OMB.
It can't just undo what Congress mandated.
Exactly. It has to work within the existing legal framework.
Got it. And Section 3B adds another layer of reality, right? It says the order has to be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations.
Right. 2 big conditions.
So basically, these actions can only happen if they follow existing laws and if the money is actually there to pay for the changes or shutdowns.
You can't just wave a magic wand and make things disappear if there are legal roadblocks or if Congress hasn't allocated funds for, say, the termination process. Practical limits.
Makes sense. Then there's Section 3C. This is the legal disclaimer stuff.
Yes, the standard but very important part. It states the order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, and so on.
Okay, break that down. For you, the average person listening, what does that legalese actually mean? Does it mean if you feel harmed by these cuts, you have no recourse?
That's a really important question. The short answer is you can't sue the government based directly on this executive order to claim some new right or benefit you think it should have given you.
So it's not creating new grounds for a lawsuit.
Precisely. It's setting out the administration's internal marching orders, how they intend to manage the executive branch. It's not creating new legal rights for the public that you could then take to court and say, hey, this order says X and you didn't give it to me. It's essentially a shield for the government against a flood of lawsuits claiming new entitlements just because of these internal policy shifts.
Okay, that's a really critical distinction. It's about how the executive branch operates internally, not a new law creating individual rights you can enforce legally.
Exactly. Understanding that helps frame the actual legal scope and impact.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's try and wrap this up. To recap our deep dive today, Executive Order 14217, signed by President Trump. It marks a very concrete, very public step towards that stated goal,
Yeah.
dramatically reducing the federal bureaucracy's size. It targets specific entities, Presidio Trust, Institute of Peace, programs like the Presidential Management Fellows, and a whole slew of advisory committees across finance, health, international aid.
And it clearly sets the stage for more reviews, more potential cuts down the road. Section 2G makes that explicit.
Yeah.
It's a definite signal. An administration aiming to reshape the scope, the function, maybe even the feel of federal government operations, driven by those stated goals: less waste, lower inflation, more innovation. Whether it achieves them and what the other effects are, that's the ongoing question.
So as you go about your week thinking about this, what does it all mean for you, the listener? How might a big push to shrink the bureaucracy, even with the goal of efficiency, how might that actually impact the public services you use, or scientific research that might benefit your family, or community programs in your town? How does that play out in the long run?
It really pushes us to think about that balance, doesn't it? The balance between government size, efficiency, and the scope of services we expect or need as a society. Which is why staying informed on these kinds of foundational documents, these executive orders, these policy shifts, it's just crucial. It helps you truly understand the currents changing how our government works.
It certainly does. Well, we hope this deep dive helped bring this important executive order into clearer focus for you. Thanks so much for joining us on the Deep Dives. We'll be back soon with another stack of sources to unpack together.